What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Godzilla Kong, The New Empire, or GXK, if you want to sound as cool as director Adam Wingard when he's referring to the flick. But if you're saying the full title, the X is silent. I read an interview with him earlier today, and he was describing how the X just means a collaboration, like when Nike works with a famous artist. Whatever. All that matters is the final product, and I think it's safe to say that the novelty or the fresh appeal of Godzilla vs. Kong has worn off. We've already seen King Kong punch Godzilla in the face a few years ago, so now we need an actual story to kind of get invested in, and I would describe this story as inoffensively bland and forgettable. It's better than recent movies like Ghostbusters, The Frozen Empire, but this is not the cultural event represented by a movie like Doom Part 2. If you like the legendary MonsterVerse, so I guess there's been 5 of them over the last 10 years, you will like this as well. I still think that Kong Skull Island is probably the best of the 5 so far, but whatever, this one's fine. But if you compare this movie to some other recent giant monster movies like Shin Godzilla or Godzilla Minus One, I think it comes up short. As we've seen over and over again, a giant budget is no guarantee of quality in this genre. I mean, this movie looks expensive, but personally, I'd like to see what Adam Wingard would do or could do if he ever went back to making weird, strange, edgy, low-budget thrillers like The Guest, which is my personal favorite of his movies so far. And whenever filmmakers set out to make one of these giant monster movies or kaiju movies or however you want to describe them, the real riddle or the real trick is, can you get the audience invested in the human characters? And some of the movies pull it off, like Godzilla Minus One back in November when I saw it. I was completely emotionally invested in several of the characters. I was invested in the pilot. I was invested in the scientist. I was like, these are fascinating characters. I don't want Godzilla to step on them. Like that's like if you would rather see them live than die, well, then the movie already is a success as far as this genre is concerned, because there are a lot of movies in this genre where the characters are pretty interchangeable, disposable, forgettable, whatever word you want to use to describe them. And with this movie, they've lost a few of the characters from King of the Monsters as well as Godzilla vs. Kong. And they've added a few, but there are a few familiar faces. But some of the actors like Dan Stevens seem to be almost through like sheer force of will trying to inject some personality, some vitality, some entertainment, some levity. And obviously Dan Stevens has a history with director Adam Wingard due to movies like The Guest. They work well together. But then there are actresses like Rebecca Hall, who I really like. I first saw her in Vicky Cristina Barcelona. I thought she was fantastic, and I've been a fan ever since. But her delivery style is so earnest and so sincere and so heartfelt that it almost seems to be clashing completely with the style and tone of this movie. Like the style and tone of this movie, it feels like an executive on a lot of cocaine was like, people like the Infinity Gauntlet from Marvel and people like Transformers. So what if we combined the two and gave it to King Kong and had him fight another scary gorilla? And so like, make that movie. Here's $300 million. Like that is what the pitch basically feels like. And so in the context of a movie like that, it's a tough path to walk for filmmakers and for actors. And I think the best example of an actor pulling that off would be someone like Ian McKellen, where whether they're making X-Men movies or Lord of the Rings movies, he's completely invested in the material. He doesn't seem to be looking down on it. He doesn't seem to be winking at the audience like, oh, isn't this silly? Like, he makes you believe in those characters. And obviously Rebecca Hall is trying to make us believe in this character, but the movie's so absurd and so stupid and so ridiculous, this overly sincere tone. I'm like, you should be in Oppenheimer, not in Godzilla Kong, The New Empire. But even if Rebecca Hall might be a little miscast or her part might be strangely written in comparison to the rest of the material, she is a vast improvement, or she is heads and shoulders above what I'm only going to describe as the headband princess who is returning from Godzilla vs. Kong, where I spent all of Godzilla vs. Kong just hoping that somebody would step on her. She's got 2 expressions. She's got the sad, concerned face when King Kong is feeling some pain, and then she's got the slow, boring smile when Kong punches somebody and feels good. And that's all she does, and that's all she does in this movie as well. I'm like, why is she increasingly like the star and the focus of this franchise? And I have no objections to weird, like supernatural powered princesses being in these movies. If you go back and watch like some Godzilla movies from the 60s, like those little miniature girls from, what was it called, like Infant Island or Baby Island or whatever the hell, the little girls that come from the island of Mothra who speak in unison. Like, there is room in the world of Godzilla and King Kong for some really weird, strange shit, but it has to be humorous or delightful or inspiring or entertaining. I just find the headband princess to be unimaginably boring, and they only deepen how boring her character is over the course of this movie as we learn about the world that she comes from. And we also have Brian Tyree Henry returning, and I like him as an actor. I've seen him be very entertaining in many other movies. I hate his character in this franchise, and his wingman, the one played by Julian Dennison, aka Josh Valentine. Either he got fired or he ran for cover, but like Millie Bobby Brown, she's nowhere to be seen, nor is her father, Kyle Chandler, anywhere to be seen. Like, you can tell some of these actors are like, please, like, who do I have to fuck to get out of these movies? Like Alexander Skarsgård, he ran for cover. I don't know if these are situations where like the movies take too long to get off the ground and so they get booked in other movies, or if they're like, please, just whatever I got to do, like, let me stop working in this franchise. But the writers of this latest movie, who include Terry Rossio, Simon Barrett, and Jeremy Slater, they have a real problem writing any characters that I give a damn about. And they even have a problem making me care about Godzilla, who I think is one of the coolest pop culture icons of the last 70 years. I think if you just count the live action movies, there have been either 35 or 36 Godzilla movies. And if you include the animated films, it goes up to like 38 or 39. Like Godzilla, he's an enduringly popular character. And obviously, King Kong goes back to 1933. I mean, he's older than Superman and Batman. I mean, it's a 90-year-old character, and people still love King Kong to death. And I think that original film from 1933, strong contender for the best giant monster movie ever made. As an adventure movie, as a science fiction movie, as a horror movie like the original King Kong, it holds up. It blows my mind that that movie is almost 100 years old and still wildly entertaining. Godzilla Kong the New Empire is nowhere close to wildly entertaining. I would have accepted kind of entertaining. Like, that would have been an improvement over this movie. I was just so bored and so sleepy and so numb to the spectacle. I remember at one point I got so depressed because there's a fight going on between King Kong and the big baddie Scargiver or Scar King or whatever fucking stupid name they came up with. But I noticed that, like, Kong hasn't even hurt his hand yet. Like, and in the trailer, I've seen him using the Transformers Infinity Gauntlet. I was like, if we haven't even gotten to the point where he gets his gauntlet, well, then we've got at least 30 or 4 minutes to go. And I just kind of sagged in my chair like, no, please end. What is the running time? 1 hour and 55 minutes. It's actually the perfect running time for a movie like this. It feels considerably longer. But getting back to this problem of writing characters where you can make them interesting, I didn't think it was possible, but these writers managed to make Godzilla less interesting. Like, all you need to do is unleash Godzilla on either a monster or a city and just sit back and enjoy the show. But they almost seem to be trying to reduce him and other titans of his kind to the role of like a pack animal or like a guard dog, whereas King Kong gets all the big scenes, all the big drama. Like, they're giving him definitely like demonstrably superior intelligence to Godzilla. And I thought that was a critical error, because I feel like if you're going to make these movies work, whether you're talking about Lethal Weapon with Danny Glover and Mel Gibson, or friggin' Blazing Saddles, or any great buddy movie that you can think of, the buddies have to be equal. They have to be equally interesting, equally compelling, and have an equal number of great scenes, equal number of great dramatic beats. And about halfway through this movie, I was like, you know what? I don't think Adam Wingard is interested in Godzilla at all. And I've watched him in interviews where he talks about things like Godzilla versus Hedorah and these movies that he, in theory, claims to like. But King Kong is the star of this movie, and I think that was a huge mistake. Unless you're going to make both of them, give them equal billing and equal screen time, well, then just call it a King Kong movie where Godzilla happens to show up for like a cameo. And what infuriated me is how this movie they never unleashed the Kraken, or they never unleashed the beast, so to speak, because you see Godzilla at least 6 or 7 times over the course of this movie going, won't, like charging up, then blasting his big-ass breath weapon, his atomic breath, and then a giant ape running and dodging and flipping around as the beam kind of chases him around. It was already done in the previous movie. They use that same trick, or they go back to that same bag of tricks like 3 or 4 times here. I'm like, it's boring. It's not interesting anymore. Like, let him actually fry somebody's fucking face off. Let him burn a hole right through the middle of a giant bad guy. Then we'll believe that this atomic breath has some real power. Because when you watch a movie like Godzilla Minus One, which was made for a fraction of the budget, some say 15 million, some say 11 million. Anyway, it was the craft service budget for Godzilla Kong the New Empire. But when you watch that Godzilla unleash his breath weapon, the dorsal fins or plates, they start popping out. And when he fired, it was a cool beam, and whatever it hit turned into like an H-bomb going off. It was so badass, so fucking cool. And I strongly recommend that everybody go online and check out the 6-minute video where you see how the technicians and director of Godzilla Minus One were able to achieve such astonishing results with such minuscule resources and, yeah, a little creativity and a little elbow grease. goes a long way. I will take a low-budget giant monster movie with a lot of creativity over a big-budget giant monster movie that has a shortage of creativity, because if history has proven anything, you don't need a big budget to make a popular or beloved Godzilla movie. And I'm not saying that every old-fashioned classic Godzilla movie is created equal. Some of them are absolutely ridiculous, and some of them are made for very small children. Like there are plenty of people out there who think there's no such thing as a bad Godzilla movie. I would not concur. I've seen, I think, 14 Godzilla movies at this point, 14 or 15. Slowly but surely getting up to speed. And yeah, like if you watch a movie like Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, it is heads and shoulders above some of the other movies from that period. But it never ceases to amaze me just how malleable and flexible these Godzilla movies are, because we've seen full-blown straight up like sci-fi epics. We've seen strange crossover movies. We've seen like movies that are basically vehicles for retired MMA athletes. We've seen movies geared towards very young children. I mean, there's a lot of room for different styles and sensibilities and different tones. So I'm not like rigidly dogmatic in terms of what I want from a Godzilla movie. But what I demand is entertainment. If you're going to spend $20 to go see a movie, you have to enjoy the experience. And I had more fun watching the trailers. And these were trailers that I'd already seen many times. The only thing worse than the movie that I saw today was that stupid Nicole Kidman AMC thing that needed to be retired several years ago, but they just keep rolling it out. They think there's some sort of like strange charm or appeal because people kind of laugh and jeer whenever they see that commercial start. I fucking hate that commercial. I wish it would go away. But if I had to zero in on one major complaint about this movie relative to a movie like Godzilla Minus One, this movie has a real problem with size and scale, where if everything is large, nothing is large. And what do I mean by that? I mean, every once in a while we see a shot of Godzilla where there's like a plane or a helicopter going by and you get a sense of scale. But if something moves like it's 6 or 7 feet tall and it's rolling around and doing lightning fast punches and like, bobbing and weaving, that means that it's small. And if something's moving almost like in slow motion, well, that communicates a giant sense of scale and size. But if, just to give an example, like the movie opens with King Kong being chased by a bunch of mutant dogs. And these are big, giant mutant dogs that live in that stupid upside down world that, where gravity is kind of on the floor and on the ceiling. I can't stand the world in between, whatever stupid phrase they've cooked up to describe that environment. But as he was being chased, it's like, whether he's 6 feet tall or 600 feet tall, it doesn't seem to matter, because the physics and the acrobatics are all going to be the same no matter what. And it actually had the reverse effect. Instead of making like the action scene seem incredibly large and over the top and thrilling and exciting, it just made the whole thing seem smaller. And over the course of the movie, as we meet hundreds of giant gorillas down in this underground realm, it actually makes King Kong feel very interchangeable, very disposable. And a lot of these gorillas are kind of like, deformed or missing hair and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, if you want King Kong to remain an icon, there needs to be just one of them. It's like when you see a superhero franchise when there's like 7 different variations on them. It doesn't make Spider-Man feel more special if you have 7 spider characters running around all claiming the name Spider-Man or Woman or Queen or Madam Web, whatever the case may be. Let Spider-Man be Spider-Man. Let King Kong be King Kong. And if you need more characters, invent more characters. But I intensely dislike this idea of King Kong kind of discovering that he is not special, he's not unique, he's just one of many, and so it just makes him seem less iconic, at least to me. And I think if you compare this movie to some other giant monster movies by other directors like Guillermo del Toro, I don't think Pacific Rim was a completely successful movie, but it had a couple scenes that were really fucking good. And they did communicate that sense of size and scale. Like the battle for Hong Kong in that movie was pretty goddamn cool. And every once in a while the monsters will speed up, but I felt the vastness and the scope and just the ambition of that film. Nothing about this movie made me feel like these were giant monsters in any way, shape, or form. I just feel like Adam Wingard, I'm sure he's making vast sums of money off of making these movies, and he is living the good life. To see where he's come from as a filmmaker in terms of like the types of projects that he started with versus where he has arrived, I'm sure he is living large and loving every second of every single day. But is he content just to make these kind of bland, forgettable movies that, people seem to like, they seem to enjoy, but no one seems to love? Like, no one's like, Godzilla versus Kong is the best fucking movie of the last 10 years. Instead, they're like, yeah, it's one of the dumbest movies of the last 10 years. At least it was one of the dumbest movies of the last 10 years until Godzilla Kong, the New Empire, which I think is the weaker of the two movies. I did not like Godzilla versus Kong, but I think I like it more than Godzilla Kong, the New Empire. In any case, I'd like to hear from some diehard monster freaks what they think about this, because I recognize that I'm more or less a casual fan when it comes to giant monster movies. Like, I've seen King Kong from 1933 a few times, seen Godzilla from 1954 a few times. I like giant monster movies, but there are people out there who like obsess over them, and like that's their whole world. They think about them constantly. They talk about them constantly. I would love to hear what they think about the legendary movies. What are the weakest movies? What are the strongest? I mean, I think King of the Monsters might be the most forgettable. I revisited it last week, and I was blown away by how much it had aged and just how dated it felt. After only 5 years, I was like, wow, this feels like it came from a bygone era, and it's so bland and so forgettable and so boring. So I think, yeah, King of the Monsters might be my least favorite of the 5 legendary movies. But Godzilla Kong: The New Empire might be my second least favorite. Definitely not my favorite, but if you want to hear the opinion of somebody who knows a lot more about monster movies than I do, I did a live stream on Saturday with Martin Kessler where we talked about basically the entire history of the Godzilla franchise, and he's seen all of them. Like I've almost seen half of them at this point. I still have a long way to go. But I'm going to leave a link in the description below to that conversation, because I think if you're a diehard monster freak and you want to hear me, or hear me less and somebody else more, then that conversation to you will be absolutely delightful, because I recognize when it comes to certain topics, I need to kind of learn my place and recognize I'm not the expert when it comes to Godzilla nor King Kong, even if I do like these characters. Like, I really enjoyed Peter Jackson's King Kong when it came out, I guess like in 2005 or so. It had great scenes, but I didn't necessarily, I think I saw it twice in the theater, maybe 3 times, but yeah, I guess to normal people, I probably seem like a diehard fan, but I recognize that to the true diehard kaiju fanatics, I am absolutely a casual. So this is just one man's opinion, and if you love the legendary movies, by all means, enjoy. Like I said at the beginning, this movie was inoffensively bland. It didn't make me mad. It didn't make me irritated. It just left me kind of lethargic and bored and disappointed. But who knows? Maybe Legendary will come back next time with a stronger movie. I mean, Legendary is very capable of making great stuff. They were responsible for Dune Part 2, so they get a lot of credit in the bank with me moving forward. But I think I've just about said anything and everything that I have to say about this particular movie. It's time to wrap this sucker up. Hope you enjoyed it to some degree. Please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.